The Persian Gulf is quiet in the early hours of March 18, 2026. Too quiet. Chief Petty Officer Daniel Carter stands on the steel deck of an American carrier, cutting through the black water. The wind smells of fuel and salt. Above him, fighter jets sit lined in perfect rows like silent predators waiting for permission to hunt. Carter has spent 16 years in the U.S. Navy, Iraq, Syria, patrols that blurred together, but tonight feels different. The air itself feels tense, like the moment before lightning strikes. He checks his watch. 2:14, far across the horizon. The coastline of Iran is nothing but a faint shadow beneath heavy clouds. Behind Carter, a young radar technician rushes onto the deck, breathing hard. "Chief, you need to see this." Inside the carrier's Combat Information Center, the room glows with dim red lights. Screens flicker. Officers stand frozen around a radar display. Carter steps closer. Dozens of bright dots suddenly appear on the screen. Missiles. Someone whispers, "That can't be right," but the radar officer shakes his head slowly. They launched. The room falls silent. Thousands of miles away in Washington, the order had been debated for weeks. Iranian forces had attacked tankers. American bases had been struck by drones. Diplomacy collapsed one tense meeting at a time. Now the war no one wanted has begun. Back on the carrier, alarms scream through the ship. Missile alert! Missile alert! The deck explodes into motion. Pilots sprint toward their aircraft. Ground crews rip safety covers away. Engines ignite with violent roars that shake the ship. Carter grabs his headset and runs toward the launch line. Above him, the first jet rolls forward onto the catapult. The pilot gives a quick salute. 3 seconds later, the fighter is hurled into the dark sky. One by one, the rest follow. The night fills with thunder, but the radar screen inside the carrier still shows the incoming threat. Iranian missiles racing low across the Gulf. Too many? Far too many. Carter watches another jet disappear into the clouds. For the first time in years, he feels something deep in his gut. Fear. Not for himself, for the men flying into that darkness, and for what this war might become. Because once missiles start flying, wars don't stay small. They grow. And tonight, the Persian Gulf has just become the most dangerous place on Earth. Suddenly the radio in Carter's headset crackles. A pilot's voice, tight with tension. "Control, this is Eagle 1. We have multiple contacts approaching the fleet." A pause, then the words no sailor ever wants to hear. "They're coming fast." Carter looks up at the black sky, and waits. The first missile appears as nothing more than a thin white line cutting across the night sky. Chief Petty Officer Daniel Carter sees it before the radar operators even shout the warning. A streak of fire, low over the Persian Gulf, then another, and another. Within seconds the sky is full of them. Missiles inbound. Someone yells across the deck. The carrier shudders as its defense systems come alive. Panels slide open along the ship's sides. Radar dishes spin faster. Computer voices begin counting targets. Carter grips the railing and stares into the darkness. He has seen combat before. Mortar, rockets, insurgents, firing blindly from distant hills. But this is something else. This is modern war. Fast, precise, merciless. Above the fleet, American fighters race toward the incoming threat. Their engines scream through the clouds as they climb to intercept. In the cockpit of an F/A-18 Super Hornet, Lieutenant Mark Alvarez locks his visor and watches the radar bloom with red contacts. Too many? Control, Eagle 1 engaging. His thumb presses the trigger. A missile launches from the wing, streaking into the night like a bolt of lightning. Moments later, a flash blooms across the horizon. One enemy missile destroyed, but dozens remain. Back on the carrier deck, Carter watches the sky explode with light. American interceptors collide with Iranian missiles high above the fleet. Fireballs bloom like violent stars. Burning debris rains toward the sea. For a moment it seems like the defenses are working. Then the radar officer's voice cuts through the radio. Multiple missiles still inbound. Impact in 30 seconds. Carter's stomach tightens. 30 seconds. Around him, sailors brace themselves. Some crouch behind equipment. Others stare upward, frozen between duty and fear. A young deckhand next to Carter whispers, almost to himself, "Please, not the ship." Carter doesn't answer, because he knows something the younger sailors do not. Even the strongest fleet defenses cannot stop everything. The first missile slips through the interception screen. It screams across the water, just meters above the waves. The carrier's close-in weapon systems erupt. Rotary cannons spin to life with a deafening roar, spewing thousands of rounds per minute into the sky. Tracers form glowing rivers of fire. For a heartbeat, the missile disappears inside the storm of bullets. Then, a violent explosion tears open the night. But it isn't the carrier that takes the hit. 2 miles away, an American destroyer suddenly erupts in a tower of flame. The shockwave rolls across the water like thunder. Carter stares in disbelief. USS Harwood. Someone says quietly over the radio. The destroyer lists sharply, burning against the black ocean. Another radar warning screams through the speakers. More missiles. Still coming. High above the fleet, Lieutenant Alvarez hears the desperate call from command. Eagle 1, we need more interceptions. Fleet defenses are overwhelmed. The burning destroyer drifts in the dark like a wounded animal. Flames pour from the midsection of the USS Harwood, lighting the Persian Gulf with an eerie orange glow. Thick smoke climbs into the clouds while pieces of twisted metal fall into the sea. Chief Petty Officer Daniel Carter grips the rail of the carrier and watches in silence. Men are still on that ship. The radio crackles with overlapping voices. Harwood is hit. Repeat, Harwood is hit. Damage control teams responding. Multiple fires on board. Carter hears something else in the background. Screaming. A helicopter thunders overhead, lifting off the carrier deck for rescue operations. Its searchlight cuts through the smoke as it races toward the crippled destroyer. But the battle isn't over. Far above the fleet, Lieutenant Mark Alvarez pulls his F-18 Super Hornet into a hard turn. The sky is a chaos of radar signals, warning alarms, and distant explosions. He exhales slowly, forcing himself to stay calm. 2 missiles left. Below him, another Iranian missile skims across the water toward the fleet. Fast, too fast. Alvarez locks the target. Fox 3. The missile launches from his wing with a violent kick. It streaks across the night and slams into the incoming weapon. The sky flashes white. Another threat eliminated. But as the smoke clears, his radar paints something new. And far worse. Multiple aircraft lifting off from deep inside Iran. Control. I'm reading fighters, Alvarez says quietly. A pause follows. Then the command center responds. Confirmed. Iranian interceptors airborne. The war is escalating. Back on the carrier, Carter hears the same report over the deck speakers. Enemy aircraft now inbound. Missiles were only the beginning. The sailors around him exchange uneasy looks. Modern naval warfare rarely becomes this close, this personal. But tonight the rules are breaking apart. Across the burning waters, the USS Harwood lists further to starboard. Its deck is a mess of shattered antennas and twisted gun mounts. Rescue helicopters circle overhead while sailors struggle to control the spreading fires. Then suddenly, a secondary explosion erupts from the destroyer's forward section. The blast lights up the entire sea. Carter flinches. Ammo storage. Someone mutters. Pieces of burning debris rain into the ocean. The situation is getting worse. Inside the carrier's combat center, commanders study the radar picture with growing concern. Missiles incoming. Enemy aircraft approaching. One American ship already crippled. And the night is still young. High above the Gulf, Lieutenant Alvarez suddenly hears a new voice on the radio. Urgent. Sharp. Unknown aircraft approaching fast from the north. Alvarez turns his jet toward the contact. At first, he sees nothing but darkness. Then the moonlight catches a shape slicing through the clouds. A fighter jet, not American. The aircraft banks sharply, revealing the distinct silhouette of an Iranian F-14 Tomcat, a relic of the warning tone inside Lieutenant Mark Alvarez's cockpit is sharp and relentless. Missile lock. The sound cuts through every other thought. At 30,000 feet above the Persian Gulf, Alvarez grips the control stick of his F-18 Super Hornet as the Iranian F-14 Tomcat dives through the clouds behind him. The enemy pilot wastes no time. A missile tears free from the Tomcat's wing. Alvarez sees the launch flash in his rear camera. Missile away. He shouts over the radio. His hands move automatically. Throttle forward. Hard left roll. The Super Hornet plunges into a violent evasive maneuver. The G-forces slam Alvarez into his seat as the aircraft twists through the dark sky. The missile chases him like a hunting animal. Its engine burns bright in the night, closing the distance fast. Alvarez reaches for the countermeasure switch. Come on. He slams the button. Flares explode from the jet's tail, scattering glowing fire across the sky. For a split second, the air behind him becomes a storm of burning sparks. The missile charges straight into the cloud of heat signatures. Then, it detonates. The explosion flashes behind Alvarez's jet, rocking the aircraft with a violent shockwave. But the Super Hornet survives. Eagle 1 still flying, Alvarez breathes. There is no time to celebrate. The Iranian fighter is still there, closing in. Back on the carrier, Chief Petty Officer Daniel Carter watches the sky flicker with distant explosions. Every flash feels like a silent question. American jet or enemy missile? No one knows. The deck is chaos now. Another squadron of fighters prepares for launch while helicopters race toward the burning USS Harwood. The destroyer's fires are spreading, turning the ship into a floating torch on the black water. Through the smoke, Carter sees life rafts dropping into the sea, men abandoning ship. He clenches his jaw. War moves fast. One moment a ship sails in formation, the next, it is fighting to stay alive. A loud voice booms from the carrier's speakers. Enemy aircraft inbound to fleet perimeter. Carter looks up again. Somewhere above those clouds, American pilots are fighting for control of the sky, and they are badly outnumbered. High above the Gulf, Alvarez rolls his jet and finally spots the Iranian Tomcat again. The older fighter is fast, powerful, and the pilot behind it clearly knows what he's doing. The Tomcat climbs sharply, trying to position for another missile shot. Alvarez checks his weapons. One missile left. Just one. His radar locks onto the enemy jet. Distance, 8 miles. Closing fast. The radio crackles with other American pilots joining the fight. Multiple bandits in the area. Watch your 6. The sky is filling with aircraft now. A full aerial battle unfolding over the Gulf. Alvarez steadies his breathing. If he misses this shot, the enemy fighter will have the advantage. He centers the target box on the Tomcat. The lock tone becomes solid. Perfect, Alvarez whispers to himself. The missile leaves Lieutenant Mark Alvarez's wing with a violent burst of flame. It streaks forward through the cold night air, locking onto the Iranian F-14 Tomcat climbing ahead of him. For a moment, everything slows. The Tomcat pilot sees the launch too late. The missile closes the distance in seconds. Then the sky erupts. A white flash blooms high above the Persian Gulf as the missile detonates against the Iranian fighter. The Tomcat disappears inside the explosion, fragments of burning metal scattering across the darkness. Alvarez exhales sharply. Splash one bandit. But the radio around him is suddenly filled with urgent warnings. Eagle 1, break right, break right. Alvarez glances at his radar. 2 new contacts directly behind him. The Iranian reinforcements. He jerks the control stick, rolling the Super Hornet into a steep dive. The aircraft screams downward toward the dark ocean below. Behind him, the enemy fighters follow. They are faster now, descending with lethal intent. Inside the cockpit, the radar warning alarm begins to howl again. Missile lock. Alvarez's heart pounds. He used his last missile. Now he is fighting with only his cannon, and whatever luck remains. Far below, the American fleet spreads across the black water like a steel city under siege. The USS Harwood still burns, its flames reflected across the waves while rescue helicopters circle desperately above the wounded destroyer. On the carrier deck, Chief Petty Officer Daniel Carter watches the helicopters returning with survivors. The first group of sailors climbs onto the deck. Some are burned, others are silent with shock. One man collapses the moment his boots touch the steel floor. Medics rush forward. Carter steps aside as the wounded pass him. Their uniforms are blackened with smoke and all. Their eyes look hollow. One sailor grabs Carter's sleeve as he walks by. They hit us fast, the man whispers hoarsely. Carter nods but says nothing. He already knows. The loudspeaker crackles again. Enemy aircraft engaging fleet defenses. Carter looks up at the sky. High above, tiny flashes mark the dogfights unfolding in the darkness. American pilots are trying to keep the enemy away from the fleet, trying to protect the ships below. Up in the sky, Alvarez pulls his jet into a desperate maneuver. Just meters above the ocean surface, the Persian Gulf rushes beneath him like black glass. Behind him, one of the Iranian fighters fires. A missile streaks downward, closing fast. Alvarez dumps his remaining flares. But he knows the truth. Flares only work so many times. The missile cuts through the burning sparks. Still locked, still chasing. Alvarez grips the control stick tightly. The ocean is rising toward him. The missile is seconds away. And there is only one move left that might save him. He pushes the Super Hornet even lower, so low the jet's shadow skims across the water. The ocean is rushing toward him. Lieutenant Mark Alvarez pushes the F-A-18 Super Hornet lower than any pilot should ever fly at night, 30 feet above the water. 20. The black surface of the Persian Gulf reflects the faint glow of the jet's engines. Every ripple looks like a mountain at this speed. Behind him, the Iranian missile is still coming. The warning alarm screams inside the cockpit. Alvarez clenches his teeth. Come on, lose me. At the last possible second, he slams the control stick to the left. The Super Hornet snaps into a violent turn just inches above the waves. The missile tries to follow, but at that speed and that altitude, it cannot recover. The weapon plunges straight into the ocean. A massive explosion erupts behind Alvarez, throwing a tower of water into the air. The shockwave slams his aircraft like a hammer. rattling every bolt in the frame. For a moment the jet shakes violently, then the instruments steady. Alvarez exhales slowly, still alive. But the danger isn't over. The two Iranian fighters are still above him, and now they know exactly where he is. High in the dark sky, the enemy aircraft circle like hawks. They descend again, hunting. Back on the carrier, Chief Petty Officer Daniel Carter hears the roar of engines overhead as another wave of American fighters launches into the night. The deck trembles under the power of the catapult. Jets shoot into the darkness one after another. The battle for the sky is intensifying. Carter walks toward the edge of the flight deck and stares across the water at the burning USS Harwood. The destroyer's fires have finally begun to fade, but the ship is badly wounded. Rescue helicopters continue lifting sailors from the deck. A nearby officer speaks quietly into a radio. Harwood crew evacuated. Ship likely lost. Carter looks at the crippled vessel. A ship that once sailed proudly with the fleet now drifts helplessly in the smoke. War does not give second chances. Above the fleet, the air battle spreads wider across the Gulf. Radar screens inside the carrier show dozens of aircraft now engaged. American fighters racing to protect the fleet while Iranian interceptors push aggressively forward. And in the middle of that storm, Alvarez climbs back into the clouds. His radar flickers with enemy signals. He is alone, low on fuel, out of missiles. But the two Iranian fighters are still closing in. Inside his cockpit, the ammunition counter for the M61 Vulcan cannon glows on the display. 400 rounds. That is all he has left. The radio crackles suddenly. A new voice. Eagle 1, this is Viper 2. We're 5 minutes out. Reinforcements. But 5 minutes in a dogfight can feel like 5 hours. The clouds ahead split apart as one of the Iranian fighters dives directly toward him. Head on. Both pilots commit at the same moment. Two jets racing straight at each other through the darkness. Closing speed. Nearly 1,200 miles per hour. Neither pilot turns away. The two fighters close the distance at terrifying speed. Lieutenant Mark Alvarez stares through the canopy of his F/A-18 Super Hornet, watching the dark silhouette of the Iranian fighter growing larger every second. The closing speed is brutal. Over 1,000 miles per hour. There will be no second chance. The targeting reticle dances across the enemy aircraft as turbulence shakes the jet. Alvarez steadies his breathing. The Iranian pilot does the same. Neither man turns away. Both know the rule of aerial combat. Whoever fires first usually survives. Alvarez squeezes the trigger. The M61 Vulcan cannon erupts. A thunderous vibration shakes the aircraft as the 6-barrel gun spits a stream of glowing tracer rounds into the darkness. The sky fills with streaks of fire racing toward the oncoming fighter. For a split second, nothing happens. Then the Iranian jet suddenly jerks to the side. Too late. Several rounds slam into its fuselage. The aircraft flashes with sparks. Both fighters scream past each other in a blur of metal and flame. Alvarez pulls hard into a climbing turn, his eyes searching the darkness behind him. The damaged Iranian fighter struggles to maintain control. Smoke trails from its engine, but it is still flying. And the second Iranian jet is now diving toward Alvarez from above. Contact high. Alvarez mutters. He rolls the Super Hornet sharply, trying to break the enemy's aim. Tracers suddenly rip through the sky beside him. The second Iranian pilot opens fire. Bright rounds flash past Alvarez's canopy, missing by only meters. The air battle has turned savage. No missiles, no distance, just machines and men trying to outmaneuver each other in the dark. Far below, Chief Petty Officer Daniel Carter watches the flashes of gunfire flickering high above the fleet. Even from the carrier deck, the battle in the sky is visible, now tiny bursts of light dancing between the clouds. One of the sailors beside him shakes his head. That's close. Carter nods slowly. Too close. If those enemy fighters break through, they could strike the fleet directly. And the ships below are already wounded. Across the water, the burning USS Harwood has gone silent. The fires are dying. The ship now sits dark and abandoned in the Black Sea. But the battle above it rages on. High in the clouds, Alvarez pushes his aircraft to its limit. The Super Hornet climbs hard, trying to gain altitude over the pursuing fighter. The enemy pilot follows aggressively. The two jets spiral upward through the clouds. Alvarez glances at his fuel gauge, dangerously low. He cannot fight much longer. The Iranian fighter fires its cannon again. Tracers slash through the air. One round strikes Alvarez's left wing. The aircraft shudders violently. Warning lights flash across the cockpit. Hydraulic pressure dropping. Alvarez grips the controls tighter. His aircraft is damaged. Fuel is running out, and the enemy pilot is still behind him. Then suddenly, the clouds split open behind. Lieutenant Mark Alvarez is damaged. F-18 Super Hornet. Two bright shapes burst through the darkness. American fighters. Eagle 1. We've got your 6. The voice of Viper 2 announces over the radio. Relief floods Alvarez's chest, but only for a second, because the Iranian fighter behind him sees the reinforcements too. The enemy pilot reacts instantly. He breaks off the chase and rolls hard to the west, trying to escape before the American jets can lock on. But it's too late. The two incoming Super Hornets accelerate like predators closing in on wounded prey. Fox 3. Viper 2 shouts. A missile launches from the wing of the lead American fighter. The weapon streaks across the sky, cutting through the clouds toward the fleeing Iranian aircraft. The enemy pilot tries to evade. He dives sharply. The missile follows. Seconds later, the night explodes with a violent flash of fire. The Iranian fighter vanishes inside the blast. Bandit down, Viper 2 confirms calmly. Only one enemy aircraft remains. The damaged Iranian jet that Alvarez had struck earlier struggles through the clouds, trailing a long ribbon of smoke. It tries to escape toward the Iranian coastline, but American radar has already locked it. Another missile launches. The final explosion lights the sky like lightning. Then suddenly, silence. For the first time in nearly an hour, the sky above the Persian Gulf grows quiet. Alvarez exhales slowly, realizing his hands are shaking on the controls. Eagle 1. You good? Viper 2 asks. Alvarez glances at his warning panels. Hydraulics damaged. Fuel almost gone. Left wing hit. But the aircraft is still flying. Yeah, he answers quietly. Still here. Below them, the American fleet continues its grim work. Rescue helicopters lift the last survivors from the burning USS Harwood. The destroyer itself drifts empty in the dark water, its blackened hull scarred by fire and smoke. On the carrier deck, Chief Petty Officer Daniel Carter watches the sky as the returning fighters begin to appear. One by one, the jets descend through the clouds and land on the carrier. Their engines roar across the steel deck. Each landing means another pilot survived. Carter finally sees Alvarez's damaged Super Hornet approaching. The aircraft touches down hard, its left wing scorched and scarred from the fight. As the jet rolls to a stop, deck crews rush forward. The cockpit opens. Alvarez climbs out slowly. His flight suit is soaked with sweat. His face is pale, but he is alive. Carter meets him near the aircraft ladder. For a moment, neither man speaks. Both know what just happened. A battle fought in darkness. Ships burning. Pilots risking everything above the sea. And this was only the first night, because across the horizon, far beyond the Persian Gulf, the war between America and Iran is just beginning.